The newsletter out there from the Companions of the Cross. We started in Canada from Ottawa since 1985, founded by Father Bob Bedard. And he was a diocesan priest in Ottawa, and he was very, very involved in the charismatic renewal movement in Canada. And it's out of that experience that eventually that the Lord called him and a bunch of young men in the early 80s to start having a prayer group together. Some of the members of that very early group were already seminarians studying for Ottawa, and then eventually the Lord called them to form a new community in 1985. And I joined them in 1999, and I also did in 2005. For most of my first 10 years, I was working at the Parish St. Timothy in North York. 3 years ago, when I was approaching my 10th anniversary, I felt there's a call to evangelize full-time, particularly working with different lay groups to form evangelizers among the lay people, because the clergy can't do them all. Right? Just too much work today to evangelize in the vineyard. So I just felt that there's a very strong need today to equip people to raise up people to be the laborers for the harvest. So I started this ministry full-time, doing missionary work, retreats, parish missions, as well as forming lay evangelizers. I work closely with a media group called the Fountain of Love and Life. They are based in Toronto, and they evangelize through the media to the Chinese. So we produce a weekly radio and TV, as well as internet contents. So I give them advice for the contents, as well as do internal formation for them, and also run workshops for them to bring more and more people, especially the Chinese population, in line with the latest tools and methodology of evangelization today. I have to say that I always like to travel. Now I have so much traveling that, it's just, you never do something so much fun that your body can't handle it. So I'm kind of doing that right now. Like my body's complaining, why are you doing this? And then I said, it's so much fun, to work for the Lord. And so I'm kind of in that space right now, very happy with my vocation. So it's my great joy to come back with you this third year to do this mission. This year's focus, we were looking at how to discern. Especially not so much in making big decisions. When we talk about discernment in the Catholic Church, among the young people and the old, I find that people always kind of zone into and say, Father, are we talking about joining the priesthood or the religious life? I'm too young, I'm too old, or whatever, I tried that before, or I'm scared, Not necessarily. Really, discernment is much broader than that. Of course, the master of discernment, the one who really put it all together in a systematic way, is Ignatius of Loyola. St. Ignatius of Loyola in the 16th century had some powerful experiencing the different ways the Lord speaks to him, especially through what we call consolation and desolation. And from that he developed what we today come to know as the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius. And in there are 14 rules very simple rules that constitute a very rich teaching of the Church on that daily preparation, the daily equipping of being able to hear more clearly the voice of God and the voice of the evil one. So it's a daily decision. I just want to keep that in mind. It's a daily decision. So we got 14 rules to cover in 3 days. It shouldn't be too difficult, right? Okay. So much of this material we owe it to Father Timothy Gallagher. Some of you watch EWTN, some of you use phones. I know this parish is subscribed to phones. You can find his books there, his videos there, his podcast is all over the place. He's on EWTN. He has been doing this for over 20 years. In so many ways, he renew and refresh the original teaching of St. Ignatius to today's living situation, our today's situation. And he has a very simplistic but yet powerful way of representing this very rich, important teaching of the Church. So much of my material will be based on that. There's some ideas that I add onto that, and I use my own examples, of course. And obviously 3 days cannot cover the whole thing. I just want to give that as a preamble. So if you really want to deepen it, if you are facing some situations in life that you felt that 3 days teachings is not sufficient, go on to forums, go on to the internet, and look for Father Timothy Gallagher's material. And I'm sure that's going to help you a great deal. When we talk about discernment, one of the first things we need to do we want to take notes? Because not everything is in your notes, okay? One of the first things we have to kind of hit home is what does the word discernment mean? It's not about figuring out God's voice. The word literally means from its origins, from its Greek origin, means cutting away. You can imagine Michelangelo seeing a block of stone, and so many times it's described, I don't see how to get to where I need to. It's more like thinking of how to remove what doesn't belong to what my visualization is. Right? So people ask him, how do you come up with this, statue of David from one rock? Well, he said that I just chip away what does not belong to David. So discernment is like that. We do cut away what does not belong to the voice of God. We all know when we quiet down, there are all kinds of noise in our head. In daily decision, very simple example, right? You come in here, maybe tonight, you may be carrying all kinds of burden, right? The concerns of life, your own state of soul, how well you're doing, how not so well you're doing this Lent so far. Worries you have at home, wondering if the Lord can, through this Lenten mission, can solve these problems for you, can overcome some of the difficulties, can give you some clarity. Right? And as soon as you sit down, there's quiet, and then all this noise coming, oh, you shouldn't come, you should be going home, you're too tired. You may get a voice saying that, well, this is going to resolve everything. Or you may have a voice that tell you problems, worries, fears, things that you have to deal with. So you have all this noise. We have to learn to hear what does what to you, what is affecting you in what particular way. And so what looks like the voice of God, what looks like the voice of the evil one. And discernment is not to be afraid of those noise in your head, in your heart, but be able to understand that, be aware of that presence, understand it, and then cut those who are not from God away. Learn to reject those that you come to know more clearly is not possible from God, and then choose more resolutely that those that sounds like is really from God. Then it becomes clearer, it becomes easier, it becomes your spiritual muscle memory. Right? So that when there's darkness, there's confusion, you're not as frightened. You have more arsenal in your belt, if you may, to deal with that and not to be perturbed so easily. So you can still choose God or God's voice when His presence cannot be felt. Much about discernment also has to do with what you really are aiming at. And it will become more clear, but I'm just going to say that because when our goal in life is different, it's going to affect how we discern. Okay? Just give you an example very quickly, is that, if my goal is good health at all costs, I'm going to have major trouble every time I get sick with the Lord. It's like, if it is not clear to me that I place health more important than God, sometimes it could be that. I don't realize that.
then it's going to jeopardize, it's going to sabotage my listening to the Lord. Because sometimes the Lord will allow us to suffer, will allow us to get sick. And if we cease that, so no, my goal in life is to stay healthy at all costs. Then there's going to be conflict. So therefore I want to begin with what St. Ignatius called the first principle and foundation. We have to get this right. Where we're aiming at. We may not get it right practically from day in, day out, but in terms of our visioning, our goal, our aim, how we evaluate everything else, we must have a solid foundation. What does the Scripture tell us is the purpose of my existence? If we don't have that foundation right, everything else is going to be off balance. Okay? So listen to what St. Ignatius wrote, okay, in the spiritual exercises, the first principle and foundation. God created human beings to praise, reverence, and serve God, and by doing this, to save their souls. Okay? Now this needs some explaining. Okay? This doesn't say that we are created to praise, to reverence, and to serve God so that we can get to what we really want, by salvation. It doesn't say that. Okay? It says that our very existence, the real fulfillment, the real joy comes from what? Comes from praising the Lord, reverencing the Lord, and serving Him. And in doing so, it's the same thing as being saved. That's what it really means. Okay? It's not an exchange. It's not a conditional thing. Say, God, I praise you, I reverence you, I serve you, then you save me. Right? You don't save me, I don't praise you. It's not like that. Some people say, well, you're Christians, do all these things because we want to go to heaven. Well, that sounds like conditional service. So, no. That's not what it says here. Okay? Being saved is that very same process. Is when we're praising, referencing, serving, loving the Lord. And in doing that, not only that we are saved, because we're being set free when we do what we are created to do, we also inspire others and draw others and empower others to do the same. So it's not just saving me, but also saving others. That's our glory. Now, Ignatius elsewhere, he reduced this to even simpler terms. Some of you are familiar with the acronym AMDG? No? You cannot be that young. Come on. Ad majorem Dei gloria, right? For the greater glory of God. That's a signature that the Jesuits use a lot, right? AMDG, right? For the greater glory of God. That's what it is. Our purpose is to give greater glory to God. Not that God need more glory, but we can allow His glory to reflect more resoundingly in my life, in what we choose, in what I choose, in what I espouse. Okay? So that's the main purpose. Therefore, so He created us to praise, reverence, and serve God, and by doing this, to save their souls. God created all other things on the face of the earth to help fulfill this purpose. Okay, so everything else. What are everything else? The material good, right? The earth, the plants, the animals, the beauty of the universe, everything else, but also the tools we create, the opportunities we have, families we have, relationships we have, our own health, long or short life, everything else. Honor, dishonor, how other people treat us. Okay? So everything else is secondary, and they can be used. So far as they can be used to glorify God, to praise the Lord. If they cannot, we need to get rid of them. Okay? So we need to use the things of this world to the extent it helps us to this end, to give greater glory to God, to praise Him. And we need to rid ourselves from these things so far as they get in the way of this end. So it's necessary for us to be indifferent to all created things as much as we are able to. So far it's very simple, right? Most important thing is to glorify God. Everything else is used as avenues, opportunities to do that.
So they're secondary. If they're blocking our ways, then we have to let go of them. Okay? So we're not attached to anything else. Right? If they're helping us, then we use them. To bring us to that place we most serve and love and glorify God. Okay? And then they break it down into practical details. Ignatius is very good at making it real. So we do not necessarily want health rather than sickness, riches rather than poverty, honor rather than dishonor, a long rather than a short life, and so in all the rest, so that we ultimately desire and choose only what is most conducive for us for the end God has created us. So going back to my example, if you were to go to Germany, celebrated our New Year, you got to know that, right? Okay. You don't realize that we're asking questions and I expect participation. Okay? I just want to be sure I'm actually talking to the audience. Being blind, I don't know if you're here. So help you. Okay? So we celebrate Chinese New Year. Your Chinese, when you celebrate New Year, what do we say? 恭喜发财, right? Which means that wishing you prosperity. But you know what? Chinese from Hong Kong didn't see that as much these days. Because, it's impossible to buy a house in Hong Kong these days. They know they're not going to get rich. So they drop that, And also in Canada, we know it doesn't matter how much money you make, it goes to the government, right? So we know we're not going to be filthy rich in Canada, unless you're already filthy rich. Right? So it's not going to happen. So what do we see now? Oh, good health. Health is important. But you know what the Chinese add to that? Health is most important. Health, is it most important according to this definition? No. Right? And some people will say, well, I'm wishing you a long life. Is long life most important according to this definition? No. But sometimes we subconsciously still attach ourselves to them. What would be the problem if we attach to long life? There will be a fear of death, right? There will be a fear of death. Right? With attached to health, there will be a fear of getting sick. There will be angry and resentment when we get sick. We complain to the Lord. I've seen many very faithful, practicing Catholic for many years. When they get sick, they complain. We do have to go through that phase, obviously. But some of them take a long time to grow out of it. Because it's a shock to them and to us that they actually attach themselves to good health. And the result is that we're not able to accept that I can do God's will when I'm sick. Which is a bit of a conundrum, it's a paradox, right? We always say, I love God, I love God. Well, there are only two ways to go to God. Well, actually, there's only one way, it's by dying, right? There are only two ways to die. Either very suddenly, violently, unexpectedly, or by sickness. Right? So, we don't want to die suddenly, and you don't want to get sick. So what do you want? Right? So it's a contradiction, and we live in that contradiction. And we don't realize we're living in that contradiction until that reliance, that attachment is revealed. Maybe that's why sometimes the Lord allows people to get sick. He said, look, you are attached to healthiness. To the point that you cannot accept that you can still do good while you're sick. You see what I'm getting at? Right? If we don't see that, we're not aware of that, we don't get out of that, that's going to block us from being able to continue to be His disciples while we are sick, while our life is coming to an end prematurely, while we are getting into a situation where we don't enjoy the comfort and the means that we have. When we find ourselves in poverty, when we find ourselves in dishonor, when we find ourselves in not being understood by others. Because we attach to comfort, we attach ourselves to ease, we attach ourselves to certain means that is available, certain protection and security. And when these things are removed, we suddenly realize that, you know what, I'm actually attached to them. And I need to change when that cannot be changed. Okay? It may take some time for us to sink in this moment, obviously. But we're going to come back to this. The whole spiritual exercise is
center around this conclusion, this insight of the human reality. Yes, our greatest purpose is not what we can get in this world's offering. Okay? It's how I can give myself away, my life away, to glorify God. And that will be tested, and until we understand that, it's hard to listen fully, easily to the voice of God. When we talk about discernment, not everything comes to us through one way. Okay, so St. Ignatius also talked about different modes of discernment. There's some different ways that the Lord wants us to engage in responding to Him. The first mode of discernment reveals some of the problems we have today. First mode of discernment is what I call divine revelation. Like St. Paul going to Damascus, and boom, there's a light and a voice. Like for him, subjectively, there's no room for doubt. Now, it doesn't make it objectively true, but for him, there's no need for discernment personally. It's just so completely overwhelmed him. Another example could be someone who experienced an apparition from Jesus or Mary or from the angels. Like the three children, Fatima, For them, it's not up to them to discern. It's so completely occupy their psyche, their emotions, their visualization, their senses. Like subjectively, it's just like so real. It's like seeing a physical object. Right? When you experience something like that, the discernment is out of your hand. The discernment is in the hands of the church. Okay? There's still need for discernment, but it's not your discernment, it's the church's discernment. We're not going to talk about this. Now, why I mention this is that today I find in the church, there are many people who will claim every spiritual experience as a first mode experience. And that people will say, I'm reading this latest visionary, it's never heard of, like this unpronounceable name from somewhere obscure, and so, they're saying this, they're saying this. So I say, okay, well, it's not approved. We can read it. We can extract what is good and test it. Said, no, it's from God. Well, how do you know? I have people who are, and I am involved in the charismatic movement. So I got people who are involved in the movement, and we exercise the gift of prophecy a lot. Right? And the danger and the good thing about that is that it's good to have this word so we can have something to discern on. So maybe that's what God is saying. But some people, I had that person pray over me and said this. God was saying that. He said, you don't know that. That need to be discerned. That's not a first mode experience. Right? We have people like that. We have people who read everything and believe everything. Today we have people who are in first world experience with the internet. Right? Everything Wikipedia tells you is Bible. Well, no, not necessarily. And of course, we got all kinds of fake news today on all kinds of media channels, right? So people are reading that and say, this is real, this is true. It's like, no, it's not. You need to discern it. You need to examine it. Even the Bible says in the first letter of John, it said, test every spirit. So testing, if something is truly from God, is actually pleasing to the Lord. Right? People will say, well, isn't it testing the Lord? I said, no, it's not. It's not. It's not testing the Lord. It's pleasing to the Lord. If He wants to tell you something, He will make sure He will repeat it not only multiple times to you, He will also use other people to interpret it or say the same thing to you. And when I was discerning the priesthood, I was telling the Lord, I said, Lord, I'm not good in listening. You have to make sure that I have no room for doubt. And I opened my big mouth. Right? And since that day, almost like for almost a whole year, every week, there's somebody, even people I have never met, who walk up to me, I see something in you, I think the Lord is calling you to something. To serve a priesthood. I said, shut up. Really, the Lord is faithful. Right? So it's okay to ask the Lord to make it clear. Okay? So that's the first one. Second one is what we're going to spend most time today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, is discerning through what St. Ignatius called consolation, desolation. So I'm not going to explain it here. And then the third one was some people will say, you know what, with this particular issue, I have no I have no stimulus coming in. I have no stimuli. I have no feelings, no imagination, no preference, no attachment, no tugging the heart at all. Nothing. Right? So this is what sometimes is called indifference. So we have to use our mind, our rational deliberation, right, to figure out logically what is most conducive for the task at hand to best glorify God. So there are times like that we're neutral. There's no feelings, no consolation, no desolation. So just to point out those things but we're going to examine mostly the second mode, but some of this is going to help you to understand the other two modes. So now we can look into the rules of the sermon, and the translation given here is by Father Timothy Gallagher. It's not his complete text, for that you have to buy his book, right? But it's sufficient enough. The original text, of course, was written in Spanish. But we need to understand a little bit about how St. Ignatius' spiritual exercises was written. Now, he didn't write it as someone sit down and write a book. It was more like a fireside chat with his confreres. Most of his own personal notes were destroyed by himself. When he first started out founding the Company of Jesus, he destroyed a lot of his own experiences because he found it was too scandalous for his followers. This is an accumulation of a lifetime wisdom that toward the end of his life, his companions finally sat him down and said, "Teacher, Master, tell us your spiritual exercises so that we can write it down and teach others." So he related to them in very experiential terms. Okay? To understand this, we have to understand the spiritual worldview of St. Ignatius. You see that diagram there, right? On the right hand, or on my right hand, on the left hand of the diagram is what? God. It's God, okay? This side is responding. Okay, good. So the other side, the enemy. Okay. Now I did explain a little bit of that. Some of you may not have read the early church fathers when they talk about spirituality. For the early church fathers, when they talk about the good spirits, the bad spirits, they don't just mean God and the devil. For them, they don't distinguish a whole lot about God involved directly or indirectly, or the evil one involving himself with us directly or indirectly. They take it all together. So categorically, when we talk about the good spirits, Ignatius, along with the early church fathers, what they're really talking about, they are talking about God, of course, the Trinity, but also the public revelation, so the Bible and the church, as well as the spirit within us, which is our conscience. Okay, so you got God, you got the church in the Bible, the teachings, deposit of faith given, and then you got our conscience. Okay? God's very channel within us speaking. Okay? So it be coming from these means. It could come from other people too. Okay? If we can discern the presence of God, the presence of the teachings of the church, as well as it resonates with our conscience. Okay? So we are talking about this on the left side of the diagram. On the other side, the enemy, okay? The enemy is referring to, did I get the right thing wrong? I did?
Yes.
I got it wrong. No, I got it right. Okay, good. Okay. The other side, okay, the enemy, okay. Oh, all right, it's like confused. The enemy, so it's not just talking about the devil. Of course, traditionally, we got three channels, right, of evil temptations, right? What do we call that? The world. Okay, you don't know that. Okay, the world, the flesh, and the devil. Okay, so it's similar to this side, right? You got the devil himself, right, and then you got also the beings of the world, of the fallen world, and then our own brokenness within. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So we're not just talking about divine presence of God revealing with thunder and the devil kind of with the horns and the tail and whatnot. We're not just talking about that. God forbid we would never see that image, but He doesn't need to show that. Okay? Now, at the center of the diagram, you see there are 3 steps: awareness, understanding, and taking action. That's the process of discernment of St. Ignatius. Okay? We're going to unpack that as we go through the rules. But sufficient to say for now is that awareness has to do with stepping back and being aware that you are in a battle. See, the heart of this diagram is that we are standing between God and the enemy. If you listen to my weekend homily, we talk about the battle line is drawn right across us. Our mind, our heart, all the different faculties that we have. There are battlegrounds. Okay? So you got God here, you got the devil here, you got the enemy here. They are both giving us different stimulus, and we have to make a choice. But we're not aware, and we don't understand it, and then we cannot take correct action. And give you an example, I'm just going to pick on the man because I'm a man, savor this way for me. Right? So let's say a husband and father come home, right? And he walked through the door, and immediately he saw toys strewn all over the porch. There's no sign of the wife, who normally would be cooking. Right? And then there's a screaming baby here with no one to look after. Now, if you read novels, you watch movie, what would this husband do? The blood would be boiling. Instead yelling, like, where's everybody? We calling for his son, like, come out, clean up the mess, honey, where are you? How come there's no food? Whatever, baby is crying, where are you? So he could get very nasty without realizing that 2 days ago the same thing happened and it was nice and sunny. Right? The same thing happened 2 days ago, he came and said, oh, where's everybody? Oh, why are you hiding here? Oh, your brother fell, broke his toe. Mommy is looking out and upstairs, and that's why it's a mess of it. Okay, makes sense. Right? But if you're not aware that there's resentment in there, there's bitterness in your heart, because of the traffic, because maybe you got a scolding at work, because of whatever disaster that happened during the day that accumulated, you're not aware of that, you don't understand what you're dealing with, and then you blow up. Is that making sense? Yeah. Okay, so we need to be aware of what's going on sometimes when forces come at us. But we're not in the habit of being aware of our state and try to interpret and understand what are being forced upon us, and our actions will be wrong. Okay, so Ignatius is saying that that's the basic, very simple 3-step. Being aware, you understand what's going on, take action. You will see that there's consolation on one side with God and desolation on one side with the enemy. Consolations are always from God. Only God can manufacture consolations. Desolations are always from the evil one. It's only permitted by God because He can bring something better out of it. Okay? And understanding that this is desolation and so it's necessary from the evil one, we're actually rejecting it. Whereas with consolation, knowing it's from God, we accept it. So I'm going to say one more thing about this diagram, well actually a couple more things, is that at every decision we make, okay, meaning that you need to be conscious, okay? At every decision that you make, you are either choosing to go toward God or choosing to go toward the enemy. There's no neutral ground. So to that, the diagram is actually incorrect. It shouldn't be side by side. It should be rather the God is on top, enemy is at the bottom. And you need to draw a big arrow beside it, pointing downward, with G beside it. Those of you who study physics will know what G means. Gravity. Okay? So you either is climbing up or you're falling down. When you're not doing anything, you have made your choice. You are falling. Okay? It is taking you down, buddy. Okay? So that's the battle we are in. Okay? Our heart, there's a gravity pull
towards sin, towards chaos, towards selfishness, okay? Towards self-preservation, shutting people out. Okay? Isn't that the case? Every time you feel upset, there's a gravity pulling you toward those potato chips and the potato couch. And become a potato before the TV. Right? Or nowadays, it's your cell phone or your YouTube channels or whatever, your Netflix or whatever, your PlayStation. We have that tendency, just allow ourselves to fall into the default. Okay? You know why it's called default? Because it's a fault. Right? So we fall. We just boom, if we're not conscious of what's going on, that's what we do. And we wonder every time, why did I get myself into this again? Isn't that the case every time we find I need to go to confession? It's the same sins. Why? Right? That's called gravity. Okay? Alright. So we're going to look into the rules. We're going to look at rule 1 and rule 2 together. Okay? Rule 1. For persons going from mortal sins to mortal sins, the enemy is accustomed to propose apparent pleasures to them, leading them to imagine sensual pleasures. Okay, so first of all, which direction are we going? No. Well, okay, let's go back to the diagram. We're going to God or going to the enemy? Going to the enemy, right? From mortal sin to mortal sin. Okay? Now, what's the word he uses here? The enemy is accustomed to propose. Is that an action that happens in the heart or in the head? In the head. To propose what? Sensual pleasure. And that happens where? In the heart of the flesh. Okay? In the rest of the body. Okay? And so that we can what? We can imagine. Okay? So we can tell that there's a battle going on here in the head, right? The enemy is accustomed to propose apparent, means it's false, right? Leading us to imagine sensual delights and pleasures. So it's not real. It's not real. It's working in our head, but we're falling, right? We're falling. So in order to what? To keep us, to hold them more and make them grow in their vices and sins. Right? So we know when we sin we don't like it, but we found that we cannot say no to it because we imagine that it can be, this time it can be different. The last X number of times were bad. But it was good for maybe for 1 hour and then it was like darkness after. But this time it's going to be different. Isn't that the case? Right? Isn't that the case for the drunkard? Isn't that the case for the liar? Isn't that for the case of someone who is chronically selfish? Right? We get all kinds of reasons. That's why I'm doing this. Next time we did it, and I'm selfish. When I finish my selfishness, I'll be so generous you want to get rid of it. We lie to ourselves that way. Yeah, we do that. Right? Because this is the lies of the enemy. Right? In this person, the good spirit uses a contrary method, stinging and biting the consciences through the rational power of moral judgment. Okay, so there are a number of words here, very interesting. Using a contrary method. This is the most used word whenever we talk about spiritual battle. Ignatius always use contrary. The good spirits, evil spirits, they are contrary to each other, the way they pull at us. Okay? So if we're experiencing two very contrasting experience, interior experience, you can bet that one is from the evil one, the other is from God. Okay? And you just have to identify what is doing what to you. Okay? And the Greek phrase that he uses all the time is adre contra. Adre means to go, contra, against. To go against. Okay? It uses a contrary method. This side is proposing false sensual pleasures that we may imagine that we can get more. Whereas the good spirits stinging and biting our conscience to arouse us to rational reasoning thought, right? Thoughts that are reasonable.
thoughts actually make sense instead of imagination that are not grounded. And you see, they work at different levels, right? Okay? How many of you, when you sin, you feel bad? Okay? The more you want to go back to sin, there's this inconvenience of God. Right? How many people kind of want to get angry with the Lord, get angry with the church? Not many people are angry with the teachings of the church because the good spirit is stinging and biting their conscience. It's actually helping them. Okay? It's actually helping them. But when you don't want to listen to it, what do? You align yourself with the evil one and contradict reason. Okay? So that's why when you find yourself contradicting reason and throwing yourself into false promises, imagining more pleasures, that's when you know that's the wrong path. That's the wrong way. Okay. Rule number 2. In persons who are going on intensely purifying their sins and raising from good to better in the service of God our Lord. Now obviously, this person is going toward God, okay? Toward the good spirit, right? It is proper to the evil spirits to bite, sadden, place obstacles, disquieting their thoughts and disquieting with false reasons, so that this person may not go forward. He would do anything to stop us. In the contrary, the good spirit to give courage and strength, consolations, tears, inspirations, and quiet, easing and taking away all obstacles, so that the person may go forward in doing good. Just to give you one example, someone who is going toward from bad to worse. Okay? For example, someone who used to be practicing in the church, going on university. Well, I can tell you my story. Actually, that's what happened. I went to university the first time away from home, didn't realize that all this time I have not chosen to go to church. I didn't need to. Every Sunday, my whole family would go to church. You don't go to church? No dim sum afterward. You have to cook your noodles at home. Kind of boring, right? But now, that, I exaggerated. It wasn't like that. But obviously, it's like, well, we do it every week. There's no need for me to choose. But it's different when you go to university because all your friends around you, they're not going to church. They're not Catholic, and their Catholic friends, they're not going to church either. And those who go to church didn't tell you. I didn't know any friends around me who were going to church. Right? So why would I? Right? For me to go to church, I have to find a church. And I have to walk there. And I may get lost. And I don't know anyone there. It's kind of scary. Yes, I was 18 years old. Yes, it was still scary. Right? And my parents didn't show me where the church is. They didn't know either, right? They just dropped me off and said, "Oh, we go to church, right?" Yeah. Go home. And amazing, once I start going to church once, from mortal sin to mortal sin. Sin begets sin. I said, "Oh, I didn't realize I could choose not to go to church. It's such a convenience to sleep on Sunday." Right? And then it just stopped. Right? And boom, 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 lead to other pleasures. I imagined that maybe all the other stuff I was afraid to try because of sin. Now I can try that because I'm not going to church. This lie can keep coming back, right? If you're not going to church, you have to go to confession anyway, because they'll pound it up before you go. Don't laugh about that, it's scary, it's crazy, it's evil. Right? So I imagine that, I can save it all up and just dump it all when I go back to Toronto, just go to my parents' parish. Never happened. Didn't happen for 18 months. So you see, that's that, right? But then there's always this constant biting and stinging our conscience. He said, this is not making me happier. This is not right. It's so a shame. Every time I come home, I wouldn't say anything. I would go with my parents to church, and they would go out to communion. I would go out for communion because what am I going to tell them? You know what? I'm in the CLC and I can't say communion. They would say, "Go to confession." I don't want to go to confession. I'm not ready yet. Right? So all these lies, right?
So there you go. And of course, there's a conversion afterwards. I start going to church after 18 months. That's another story. You know, I start going to church. Right? From good to bad, I get involved in the church, but then I just keep falling into the same sins. You see what I'm getting at, right? It's the same sin. You know, the stinging and biting now is from the other side, saying that, look at you, you are still sinning, you are just like before. All these things about going to the church and all that, give it up. It's not helping you. It's not helping you. That's the way of the enemy. But we have to know the tactic of the enemy is to shame, is to cast us down, is to put us despair, is to accuse us of our uselessness. But meanwhile, during that whole struggle, I have all kinds of messengers from the Lord. My friend will share with me their struggles, right? Easing the pain, quieting the disquieting thoughts, giving reasons to trust in the Lord. Yeah? You see what St. Ignatius is saying here? God has a way far greater than the enemy. They are not in ego footage at all. At all. Right? The very thing that the evil one shame us, God will say, yeah, you are powerless, you are nothing, but I love you. In fact, the more nothing you are, the more I love you. Right? How can the enemy be able to shame you when you're completely nothing? I know, I'm a sinner, you know, but God loves me. You know, so that's the way He works. And when I am alone, when I'm despairing, when I feel that I'm completely powerless, He sends other people to me. Knocking on my door, I say, are you going, how are you doing? You know, why don't you come to our house? We'll have a prayer meeting, you know, we're going to sing some praise, and then we're going to go to confession. Right? Do you need to go to confession? Let's do it together. You know, it's difficult for us too. Let's do it together. so it's breaking down what is difficult, breaking down what I cannot come up with by dividing or destroying something that I could never imagine. That's root 2. The power from on high is far greater. They're not on the same plane at all. All right, you got it so far? Yeah. You're with me. Good. Okay. We're going to go to root 3 and root 4. We'll talk about 2 of the terms. We already talked about consolations, desolations. There are a lot of misunderstanding there. We hear a lot about these 2 terms. St. Ignatius, as I said, this is not a treatise. This is not something that he sat at the desk over a few months and drew it out. No, it was like a fireside chat with his companions. So it's rich on experience, very astute, by the way, but not so much like a church doctrinal document. So he never defined consolation and desolation, but he gave examples to help us to understand, to grasp, to resonate what this may mean, if I can identify it in my own experience. So we use 3 different kinds of experiences to talk about spiritual consolations. Okay, the first kind. When some interior experiences is caused in the soul through which the soul comes to be inflamed with love for its Creator and Lord. Consequently, he can love no created things on the face of the earth in itself, but only the Creator of them all. So this is kind of like a mystical falling of fire. I don't know if you ever experienced that. I experienced that a few times in my life, you know. Especially when there's this Holy Spirit coming upon, that you realize that God He really does love me. He really forgives me in my sinfulness, brokenness. In fact, He really is chasing after me, not because I'm good, but precisely because I'm bad. Because I'm smelly and stinky. Right? Because I'm the lost sheep who got into muddy water, who got into all kinds of dirty, broken and shady places. He is willing to put me on His shoulder. He's the prodigal son's father, who is even more prodigal. This is the greatest part of the whole story of the prodigal son, is not bestowing his identity. You realize the father never asked his son to wash. Right? The son came home. Where has he been? He was with the pigs. If your kid come home after hockey game, you would not embrace him. Forget about kissing him. Right?
Take off your clothes, go to the shower before you touch anything at home, and clean up after yourself, right? This father, without the son saying a word, went up and embraced him and kissed him. Put the best clothes on this, filth. And even at the party, you never ask him to take a shower, Go to the party, sing and dance in your own filthy clothes. There's this flame of fire where you know that God is true, right? And you realize that God is real. He is real. And you want to love Him, you should have that energy and the power and the desire and say, I want to love God above all else. Everything else is strong. Right? You can see that with St. Thomas Aquinas, everything else is strong. God is so beautiful. I want to throw myself at His feet to serve Him. There are moments in our life that we may experience that. Okay? That's when you know it's definitely spiritual consolation. Right? Now, it may not be that extreme, of course. Okay? It's just a raising of the heart to love the Creator. And you see all other things as secondary. Okay? Second experience. Likewise, when it sheds tears, moved to the love of His Lord, whether out of sorrows for one's sins or the passion of Christ our Lord, or because of other things directly ordered to His service and praise. Right? So there's this desire, this manifestation through tears, through action, through desire, want to translate our values to be more aligned to Him. There's great energy, enthusiasm to want to serve, to want to do God's will. That's when there's a joy coming out of that closeness to God. Sometimes we don't derive any joy in that closeness with the Lord. That's when it's the opposite going on. But there's a joy, there's a pleasure, there's a delight, there's an energy, there's a bubbliness about it. Well, this must be consolation. This must be spiritual consolation. And he continued to say, third experience, consolation, every increase of hope, faith, and charity, all interior joy that calls and attracts to heavenly things, and to the salvation of one's soul, quieting and giving peace for His Creator and Lord. Isn't that beautiful? Don't you want it? Yes. And for those of you who have never experienced that, maybe sometimes we're not conscious, maybe it's happening. There are times we find that prayer is not easier, and there are times that it's just so dry. Right? When it's so easy, when that relationship is so real, when it's so tangible, is when we know that relationship with the Lord is being elevated. It's being elevated. Okay? Now, Ignatius is really talking about spiritual consolation. Now, there are other consolations, right? Like when I was so tired, and I see a bed, and I lie down. And there's no alarm clock, no work to wake up early for. That's consolation. When you're fasting all day Friday, and you wake up and there's this smell coming from the kitchen and discover your kids have cooked for you. Bacon, ham, eggs, all that healthy stuff. Hash brown, cooked with perfection, that's consolation. When you come home after a very tired day, your spouse will cook dinner, your children are all there, and they give you a free massage. And they all stick around and talk to you. That's consolation. How many of you are hungry for that, right? I know. It's a dream, It could be real, you never know. Consolation. There are all kinds of non-spiritual consolation. So, a lot of spiritual consolation we can construct, right? We can work, we can build up those non-spiritual consolation, right? We can have healthy life, we can have good meals, we can have good recreation, good exercise, good vacations, good friends, good family values, right? We can build that. Right? Can you imagine that when we have good non-spiritual consolation, is that conducive to spiritual consolation? Do you think? Yes. Yeah, it probably would, right? Would it help to extend your spiritual consolation? Yes. It probably would, right? Whereas if you don't have any non-spiritual consolation, come home, you're alone, nobody talks to you. Now that's not spiritual desolation yet. Right? It's not necessarily absent of spiritual consolation, but it could easily discourage you, right? you're hungry all the time, it's quite hard to pray. Right? Now, rule 4, spiritual desolation. I call desolation all the contrary of rule 3. Now, Ignatius could stop here. He could. But he didn't. Because there's more than simply being contrary to rule 3. And this is significant, this is important. Okay? Which is darkness of soul, disturbance in it, movement to low and earthly things, disquieting from various agitations and temptations, moving to lack of confidence, without hope, without love, finding oneself totally slothful, timid, sad, and as if separated from one's Creator and Lord. If you're thinking about that, listening to these words, makes you sad and heavy. When you're depressed, don't read this. It's deadly, right? So let us unpack that a little bit. Right? It's contrary to consolation, but it's more. There's a disabling kind of force, right? There's like blanket thrown over you. There's a sinking of spiritual reality. Like consolation is lifting up, become brighter and clearer, becomes easier. Voices of God is so clear, whereas desolation is like you can't hear, you can't see, you can't feel. It's sinking into this darkness. You're not sure. There's temptation. There's all kinds of muddiness, murkiness. And then it goes into this extreme, without hope, without faith, without love. Completely separate from God. Okay. So just as we talk about consolation, there is spiritual desolation, there's also non-spiritual desolation, right? Okay? So non-spirituation, I experienced that just recently. I came back from Calvary and Edmonton. I couldn't sleep when I need to sleep. And when there's host prayer at 7:30, I couldn't get up. In fact, when I got up at 8 o'clock, I feel like I was a zombie. There was definitely desolation in the body and in my thoughts. Right? I remember last time I came back from Australia, I went to the office. I felt like, I don't know why I'm here. There's like a fish tank in there. You know? It's horrible. It's a terrible experience. Right? Now that's not the same as obviously necessarily that there's a problem with the relationship with the Lord in the context of spiritual desolation, but there's physical desolation. Physical desolation could be lack of food, lack of sleep, lack of exercise, it could be lack of healthiness, it could be lack of relationship, lack of being cared for, being loved, being understood, all kinds of things like that. And again, the same thing with consolation, the same thing with desolation. When we are lacking non-spiritual desolation, when we are having, when we're having a lot of spiritual desolation, do you think that it's going to cause us, make it easier for us to fall into spiritual desolation? Yeah. Go ahead. Are you being scolded at all the time? Don't you want to get angry with that person and then you get angry with God? Right? When you're being misunderstood all the time, when you're hungry all the time. That's why, sometimes it could distort our thoughts. Right? When we're deprived of health, general health, balanced life. Okay? There are a number of things that Ignatius added when understanding consolation desolation. First of all, do you think the saints regularly experience spiritual desolation? Yes. Okay. So when you experience spiritual desolation, don't feel ashamed. Okay. Same thing is that, do you think it's possible to have spiritual consolation and that lasts forever? No. When does it last forever? In heaven. Right? So when your consolation is gone, don't beat yourself up. It's not within our control all the time. Okay? I have people who come to confession and they will tell me that, Father, I don't love the Lord. So why do you say that? That's a very strong accusation. He said, when I pray, I don't get the same feeling as I had before. The Lord must have abandoned me. What is it experiencing?
Desolation.
Desolation. It's normal to have desolation. We're going to look into that probably tomorrow. There are some reasons given why we have desolations. Right? But when we have desolations or we cannot hold on to a consolation, that's normal. The important thing is for us to be aware of that, and understand that this is consolation, this is desolation. I'm experiencing this, I'm experiencing that. And be able to choose when it's consolation, I choose what it is, what it's suggesting, and the thoughts it gives me. I respond to that favorably. When it's desolation, it may give me all kinds of evil thoughts, all kinds of selfish thoughts, all kinds of darkness and accusations and hopelessness and actions to propose to forget about my faith and to turn away from God. I need to understand and see that I'm going to reject that. I'm going to reject that. And that's all I need to do. Okay? Ignatius goes on to talk about consolations with some extra description. Okay? Talk about how when we're in consolation, it casts out all uneasiness within us and draws to a complete love of our Lord. All trials are pleasant and all weariness are rest. We still have our problems with spiritual consolation. Right? Darkness could still be around us, but there's a clarity, there's an ease, there is an energy there. And when we're experiencing that, well, it's like the guy who came home, right, that I talked about, right, came home and see all the mess in the home. 2 days ago, he has a cheerfulness about him. Right? He can deal with it with ease. Now, he has a heaviness within him. Right? And he's dealing it with selfishness, with judgment, with harshness. Right? Same situation, but his interior state was different. Right? So if he is willing to pull himself out and examine what's going on, how come there's a discrepancy from 2 days ago, that he'll be able to say that 2 days ago I had consolation. Today I'm doing desolation. Desolation suggests to me what? That you are right, they are wrong. That you have a right to be angry with them. You have a right to be judging them. Right? And that's wrong. We need to reject that. We need to reject that. Consolation also is a time that it points out and opens the way we are to follow, gives light and clarity, and points out the way we ought to avoid. So consolation is everything is clearer, that God is speaking to us in ways that we are more ready to accept. Right? There is a readiness, quickening of our heart. And this one is in consolation that we really need to spend time to look at how we can structure our lives, our schedule, our spiritual proposals, exercises we're to adopt, spiritual exercises we're to adopt. Maybe reading more Bible, going to adoration more, maybe going to a prayer group, maybe going to a support group, so on and so forth. That's the best time for us to make those decisions because it's easier, we're more balanced, there's a clarity, there's a confidence for us to know this is right, this is rightness about it. Conversely, some of the other stuff that going on that help us to pinpoint we're experiencing desolation. One of them we already mentioned is that there's a sense of universal negativity. So this is how it's not just the opposite of consolation. Consolation is more gentle, it is more inviting, it is a freedom, but we still need to choose. Whereas desolation is more like a slam on the face. Right? There's like a slam, boom. You have always been bad. Right? You have never changed. God will never talk to you. This is not ever going to help you. Right? There's a universal negativity. It's not just now, it's just for a short time, it's forever. It's absolute. You are completely this or that. So it's very strong, okay? So that's one way we know when that's going on, that's definitely spiritual desolation. And completely, totally, always, all, okay? And they're all lies. And they're all lies. Okay? They're all lies. It's not true. Okay? Desolation claims power to interpret our spiritual past and predict our spiritual future. Right? What's it going to say? Is that, all the good things you have in the past, you imagined it. You imagined it. I can point that to some of the experience in my life when I was coming back to the church, right? And I keep falling, and they go through a routine on Friday and Saturday. Friday I'll be, I need to go to confession. I don't want to go to confession. So seeing priest, we're seeing face to face. He knows all my sin. It's like I want to go in there and just say, it's the same as last week. And so I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Right? And I was actually say, you know what, even if you go, you will sin again. Look at that, you went to confession last week, you're in the same boat now. Right? It's not helping you. But it's all lies, right? We know it's lying. But it's like telling someone, it's like, why do you bother to put on a band-aid? The last time you cut yourself, you put a band-aid, oh my God, you're bleeding again. It's a new cut. It's like, don't bother to see your doctor, You just saw your doctor 2 weeks ago, right? When you had your flu, now you have a stomach ache, He's not helping you. It's a new problem, okay? But when we are in desolation, we don't think clearly. We don't think clearly. The voice of the evil one is louder when we're in desolation. Right? So it reinterprets our past. The past is all the good you imagine that you have in the past were all imagined. And all the future is futile. No use. Give it up. It's not going to help you. It's not going to be candy down the canoe. There's no light. You are sinking. You're going down, buddy. Right? So it's really depressing. Past goods are goodness, future of futile. When you hear that voice, remember that game that we used to have in the arcade called, I think it's called Whack-A-Mole? You know what I'm talking about, right? Some of the younger folks don't know what I'm talking about. But those things that kind of pop their head up, you got this rubber hammer, you're supposed to boom, right? That's what you need to do when you hear that voice, boom. Now that's when you can Christianly really say to the enemy, go to hell. Okay? Now don't say that in front of your parents, right? I gave this teaching in New York, New Jersey, at American Counter. And there was a guy who was driving home that day, and he see all these drivers blocking his way, and he said, go to hell. He said, no, that's not for people, that's for the evil voice within you. But we have to do that, because if we don't do that, it's going to take root. Right? Satan, get behind me. Go back to where you came from. Right? So we have to do that. It's kind of like Gandor in Warrior, Go back to the darkness! For those of you who know Lord of the Rings. Right? Lastly, desolation also tend to get very personal. It presents itself as a personal identity. It's not just saying that you committed a crime. You say that you are a criminal. It's not saying that you lied. It's saying you are a liar. It's not saying that you committed bad things. It's saying you are a bad person. You are hopeless. You are a piece of, Now you're thinking that, I think I'm a piece of garbage. Now, it's amazing. I won't answer this question, but it's amazing. A lot of people, a lot of Christians, a lot of very devout Christians think that they are a piece of garbage. And that's the voice of desolation. That's the voice of the enemy. And somehow, a lot of Christians allow this lie to live. No. It's time for it to end. Whack it on the head. Now, consolation, desolations, again, Ignatius, he's addressing all the different faculties of our being. Consolation, desolations happens here in our heart. right? The lifting up of our relationship, that deep spiritual connection with the Lord is consolation. That cutting out of that sensation, that presence, that light, the clarity from God in the depth of our heart, that's spiritual desolation. Okay, so it happens here. But it doesn't stop there, because consolation and desolation also suggest thoughts in our head. What are some of the thoughts of consolation? You can do it with God. God is forgiving. He's right here. God can do all things through you. It may be impossible for you. You can do it with the Lord. Right? All you need to do is do a small part, and God will multiply the fruitfulness. Well, those are the thoughts that consolation gives you. What are the thoughts of desolation? It's contrary to that. Right? Not just you can't do it. You are hopeless. You are powerless. What are you going to do? What is it going to be useful for? Well, you may help this one person. You don't even know if tomorrow he is going to follow your instructions. There's a lot of mocking in there. Right? There's contrary thoughts. The thoughts are just, your actions are not going to help anybody anyway. So may as well pick up the potato chips and sit on the potato couch. Just be selfish, indulge yourself. You deserve it. And even if you don't deserve it, what is it going to change? Okay? Isn't that the lure of desolation? Shut yourself in. Shut others out. Right? How are we doing time? 9:02. I told you, I only stretch time until 9:15. I would like to go home. I do need to get to Rule 5. It's very important. You can forget everything about this mission. You can forget about me. You cannot forget Rule 5. It's going to save your life. Okay? You put a star beside it. Put 3 stars beside it. Memorize it the best you can. Don't memorize it wrong though. Okay? It's very important you get it right. Okay? Rule number 5 is a lifesaver. Lifesaver. Okay? And now to get to get to it. Rule 5. In times of spiritual desolation, never make a change to a spiritual proposal, but be firm and constant in it. The proposal's determinations in once the day made the day before such before such desolation, or during the consolation that precedes it. In other words, when we make a spiritual proposal at the time that we are in spiritual consolation, or when it's relatively neutral, and sometimes we don't have consolation, we're desolation, and then we find ourselves in a time of spiritual desolation. Ignatius said, never, he almost never used the word never, but never change those previously made spiritual proposals. That's a very strong statement. Okay? Right. So what constitutes a spiritual proposal? Spiritual proposal is something that can help to maintain and deepen your relationship with the Lord, and also strengthen and deepen your ability to respond to your first principle and foundation, to give greater glory to God. For example, at the time of consolation, you make a decision, and you know you could, to pray 15 minutes every morning. Right? That's a spiritual proposal. Right? To commit to going to a retreat this coming weekend, or attending your parish Lenten mission. Okay? That's a spiritual proposal, right? This last Sunday, you heard this blind priest preach, So that's interesting, And I felt, I'm more hopeful and strengthened, I want to serve the Lord more. So let's hear him out to make a decision. You come to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night. Okay? Spiritual proposal. Not all proposals are spiritual proposal, right? Not every proposal is spiritual proposal, right? being healthy is not a spiritual person. It's a non-spiritual person. Okay? Of course, it doesn't mean that we change it to where I'm going to be unhealthy. No, it's not within our control even. Right? So that's not a spiritual proposal. It's a proposal. It's a good proposal. Right? Just try to stay healthy as much as possible. Right? Even staying with your spouse is not a spiritual proposal necessarily. Right? It's a commitment in the married life. Right? There are all kinds of things that add to that. Right? So sometimes we have to distinguish that. And then he's talking about when you're in a state of spiritual desolation, you don't change your spiritual proposals. But sometimes when we are not in a spiritual desolation, we could be in a non-spiritual desolation that will require us to change our spiritual proposal. For example, God forbid tomorrow you got very ill, right? I don't know, you caught something, you got diarrhea. Okay? Just before 6 o'clock. And you already take your Imodium, but you know it's not going to take effect that quickly. Please, don't come. Okay? So, oh no, I'm not going to break rule 5, I'm going to come anyway. No. Okay, no. Okay? No. That's not a spiritual desolation. Okay? Now, some people translate this is that when you are feeling bad, you cannot change anything. No, that's not what it says. There are certain things you need to change. But you cannot change a spiritual proposal when you are in a spiritual desolation. You got it? Yeah. Give me some example. Let me give you some example. Right? So, let's say tomorrow you committed that you're going to come tonight, tomorrow, and Wednesday night. Okay? You did. You said, well, I'm going to do that. My schedule has worked. Tomorrow you got a bad day. Okay? Something happened when you go to work tomorrow, and you were wrongly accused and justly treated by your boss. Okay? You and your partner have done something that turned out didn't work, and your partner got away scot-free, although the problem actually originated from him. When your boss landed flat on you, you are the culprit. You have to do it all over again. Your promotion is going to be cancelled. You got so mad. Okay? And all the teachings you received tonight, you forgot. Okay? So, you usually, during lunchtime, you pray the rosary. You try to pray the rosary, but there's so much anger in you. You say, I can't pray. I'm not going to pray. Okay? And then it grew and grew and grew, and the day goes on to get worse. Okay? And then on the way home, you felt so angry, you said, I'm going to go home and just soak. Get my potato chips, my potato couch. And watch my favorite soap opera or whatever, I don't know what to do. Right? And then when it comes time around 6:45, you say, well, forget it. I'm protesting, I'm on strike. So, Lord, until you make me happy, I'm not doing anything. Is that breaking rule 5?
Yes.
Yeah, that's spiritual desolation, right? God seems to be far away, you're angry with the Lord, and the relationship is, there's a sinking. You're thinking of earthly things, thinking of your potato chips, thinking of pleasuring yourself, getting your recompense. And then the spiritual proposal is how to move. You see how dangerous it is? I deal with this many times. I look at my own life. I have committed rule 5 so many times. And every time I know it was the wrong decision. 9 or 10, every single one of them, they were wrong decisions. And I remember most vividly is that when I was doing my philosophy study, when I was doing my master's degree, I knew the Lord was calling me and it's confirmed that I need to go to the seminary, except I didn't realize to join the seminary in Toronto, I need to do my philosophy first at the time. I didn't have any philosophy. So, to make the long story short, I made a mistake that instead of just studying at St. Philip Oratory downtown, I made a mistake that actually I decided to live there. My spiritual doctor kind of told me afterwards, you know what, you're not ready to live there yet. Well, you didn't tell me clearly already. But anyway, I thought it was God's will, so I moved there, right? 3 days later, I just want to crawl out. It was just spiritually, physically, mentally, I wasn't prepared. I wasn't in that space. There's nothing wrong with what they have there, just something wrong with me. I wasn't transitioned into that mindset. And so it's very difficult. So I talked to the spiritual director that I have in the oratory at the time. And I told him that, you know what, I think I made the wrong decision to come here. I need to go. So he said, well, you might have made a wrong decision to come in here, but don't make another wrong decision to leave. Because it was a spiritual proposal to go in there, right? I was not in desolation when I made the decision. I could be logically wrong, but spiritually I was in a high. It was a real high with the Lord. Right? I was energized. I think I can do everything, right? And He strengthens me. And then He strengthens left me, and I think that I was at the bottom of the dry well. I was in desolation. I was desperate. And He was right. That was Rule 5. Don't change your spiritual proposal. Stick with it. If you wake up early in the morning, usually you pray, and then there's one night you couldn't sleep. That's non-spiritual desolation, right? And you woke up, you felt like the Lord is 10,000 miles away. You say, I don't want to pray. And what does Rule 5 tell you? You need to be contradicting it. Naturally contrary, to go contrary to it. And the voice is telling you not to pray. You make the decision, you will pray. Yeah, if you don't feel the Lord's presence, you go ahead and pray. Okay? That's Rule 5 for you. But again, remember that it is spiritual desolation, not changing a spiritual proposal, not otherwise. Okay? People will ask why. Because it is in consolation that the Lord's voice is clear, that your thinking is clear, that your knowledge of yourself is clear. And so what the decisions that you make is doable, is desirable, is going to help you, and is going to equip you to fight against the enemy. That's what spiritual proposal is supposed to do to you, to do for you. Right? Whereas it is precisely when you're in spiritual desolation that the voices that you hear is untrustworthy, your thinking is murky, is unreliable, and your desire is fickle. And that is not to be trusted because the enemy's advice cannot be trusted. You got it, right? Yeah. Clear as mud. So if you are in spiritual consolation or neutrality right now, it's going to be very easy. It's going to be a lot easier for you to take in right now. If you're in desolation right now, it may not be as easy to take in. But hold on to that. That's why I give you these notes. So you can come back to it. So when you are less in a desolation, then it makes more sense to you. Okay? So we cover 5 rules today. I think I will let you go. Tomorrow we have a bit more time because Mass will be a little bit shorter, having one less reading. So we will need to get to rule number 11 tomorrow. I asked you, well, I won't ask you not to read the notes, because it's okay that you read ahead, right? But I do ask you to bring it back tomorrow. Okay? We don't want to run out tomorrow. Okay? We don't want to kill more trees than necessary. Okay? Alright? So bring back the notes, and we'll continue. But I just want to end with prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Come, Holy Spirit, you who instruct the hearts of your children. Make our hearts docile, our mind open. Free us in the moment of darkness, and keep us always trusting in the Lord. Let what we have listened to, especially those words, the most appropriate for our needs today, O Holy Spirit, magnify them, plant them deep in our hearts, and ever renew them in our minds, that we will always learn from what you have spoken, and act on it in our life. Make it fruitful. Make it useful. Make it transformative in us. Not just head knowledge, but a source of transformation. That we will really use that wisely, actively, regularly, so that we can give greater glory to God the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. In the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. There's one last thing. You've been through the routine. I have some envelopes. You don't have to put anything in it today, unless you're not coming back. But take it home and pray with it. And ask the Lord, what do you want me to put in it? And then bring it back either tomorrow or Wednesday. That's just going to go toward my missions, my work, and the work of the companions. And any excess will go to our seminarians who need our prayer and also our financial support. Thank you.